The Unknown Neighbor. The Golden State Killer. Picture California in the 1970s. Suburban streets, children riding bicycles, families barbecuing in backyards. A safe and quiet life. Or so it seemed. Because hidden behind one of those tidy doors lived a man who would become one of the most feared predators in American history. His name was Joseph James DeAngelo, better known the Golden State Killer. The Mask of Normalcy. Joseph DeAngelo looked like an ordinary man. He was a Navy veteran, then a police officer. Later, he worked as a mechanic and raised a family. He lived in modest homes, waved to neighbors, and shopped at local stores. To those around him, he was strict, sometimes unfriendly, but never dangerous. Yet behind this mask of normalcy was a man leading a double life. While his neighbors saw a grumpy retiree, California police were hunting a phantom whose brutality had no limits. The crimes begin. His rampage started in 1974. At first, police noticed a burglar they called the Visalia Ransacker. This intruder broke into houses, stole coins, jewelry, even photographs. Objects with more personal than financial value. It seemed strange, but no one connected it to what would come next. By 1976, Sacramento was under siege by the East Area Rapist. He didn't just break into homes, he attacked women, often while their husbands or boyfriends were tied up nearby. He used ropes, shoelaces, whatever he could find. He would whisper threats, sometimes for hours, controlling every moment, every breath of his victims. More than 50 assaults were recorded. Later in Southern California, families were murdered in their beds. This new figure became known as the original Night Stalker. The brutality escalated. Bludgeonings, stabbings, shootings. By the late 1980s, the tally was chilling. At least 13 murders, over 50 assaults, and more than 100 burglaries. It took investigators decades to realize all these names belonged to one man, the Golden State Killer. A predator's method. DeAngelo planned his crimes with military precision. He stalked neighborhoods for weeks, studying routines. He sometimes called potential victims to test their reactions, then hung up. He broke into homes in advance, unlocked windows, left bindings ready for his return. During attacks, he controlled his victims with fear. He tied up men, stacking plates in their backs, warning that if a dish fell, they would both die. Then he turned his attention to the women. Sometimes he lingered, eating food from the refrigerator, moving objects as if savoring his power. Survivors recalled his heavy breathing, his whispering voice, details that haunted them for decades. Living among them, while police launched massive investigations, DeAngelo blended into everyday life. He worked, went shopping, raised children. He was right there, in the suburbs, living next door to the very kind of families he terrorized at night. His neighbors in Citrus Heights, where he lived later, described him as grumpy and prone to sudden bursts of anger. But no one could imagine that this ordinary man was the predator California had feared for more than 10 years. The hunt and cold years. By 1986, the attacks suddenly stopped. The trail went cold. Detectives retired. Victims were left without answers, and many believed the killer had vanished forever. In truth, Joseph DeAngelo had simply moved on with his life, hiding in plain sight. It wasn't until the 2000s that investigators finally connected the crimes under one name, the Golden State Killer. But his true identity was still a mystery. DNA breakthrough. In 2018, everything changed. detectives turned to a new technology, genetic genealogy. Using DNA from old crime scenes, they searched public genealogy databases, the same ones people use to discover distant relatives. The DNA trail led to one man, Joseph James DeAngelo. After decades of fear and mystery, the face of the Golden State Killer finally emerged. Arrest and trial. In April 2018, police surrounded his home in Citrus Heights. DeAngelo, then 72, was arrested. Neighbors were stunned. For them, he was just the cranky old man on the block. For investigators, he was the monster they had hunted for over 40 years. In 2020, DeAngelo confessed to 13 murders and dozens of assaults as part of a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Survivors and families of victims finally had their day in court. They described decades of trauma, fear, and sleepless nights. DeAngelo sat in silence, frail and aging, but the horrors he caused remained as fresh as the day they were committed. He was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole. The chilling legacy. The Golden State Killer left behind more than victims and headlines. He left a haunting lesson. Evil does not always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes it lives right next door. He was a father, a neighbor, a man people passed every day, and also a predator who terrorized an entire state. And that is what makes his story unforgettable. Because if someone like Joseph DeAngelo could hide in plain sight for decades, who is really living behind the smile of the neighbor across your street?